everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be reviewing and giving my first impressions of the Colourpop Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. So I very recently got this palette in the Colourpop Keep It Classified mystery box. If you're interested in seeing everything else that I received in the mystery box, then I will link that video in the description. Definitely check it out after this one. So this is what the actual palette looks like. It's the same as the cardboard uni carton, apart from it's got all these velvet kind of additions to the front of the palette, which I think is absolutely gorgeous and just makes the palette look really expensive and really opulent. We've got the shade names on the back, and something you don't normally get in a Colourpop palette, it has a mirror in it and 12 really beautiful shades. So I'm going to go ahead and get these swatched, and then I will be creating an eyeshadow look with this palette and giving my first reviews and first impressions. So first things first, I'm going to get all of the shades swatched in the Colourpop Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. So these are the shades in the Colourpop Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. So I'm going to go ahead and get this top row swatched first and then just make my way through the rest of the shades. But so far so good. They are looking really pretty, really love the colour story, and yeah, excited to see what these look like swatched. So that is the first 4 shades in the Colourpop Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. So starting at the top is this very lovely kind of neutral matte shade, that is shade Runway. Then there's a slightly more brown toned nude matte shade, that is shade Ironic. Then there's this far more orange toned matte shade, which is shade Slip Dress. And then the first shimmer of the palette, this very gorgeous kind of, again, a brown toned shimmer, and that is shade Video Night. So far, nice shades, they've swatched very nicely. So the next row of shades I think are even more gorgeous than the first row. That pink at the top there was so buttery to swatch. I think I'm going to try and incorporate it into the eyeshadow look. Well, I'll see how the other shades swatch first, but so far this has definitely been my favourite shade. That is shade Throwback. Then there's this gorgeous, again, kind of like a rust toned matte shade. It's really quite pretty. That is shade Velour. Then you can't quite see, but this is like a gold, I'd say more of like a bronzy gold shimmer, not as buttery as this one, but still very, very easy to swatch. That's shade TLC. Then we've got another kind of mid-tone brown matte shade, and that is shade Depth. So yeah, 4 more really gorgeous shades, and I'll go ahead and get the final 4 swatched. These are the final 4 shades. This row of shades is definitely the most like sultry shades out of the whole palette. I would definitely say these are more maybe like evening shades, or like more for a going out look, or just an everyday look if you fancy something a bit sultry or a bit vampy. But again, 4 really, really gorgeous shades. So starting at the top here, this is kind of like a purple toned brown. I don't think the swatch really picks it up too well, but it is a really, really pretty shade. That shade Girl Band. Then the final shimmer of this palette, again, it's so buttery and so easy to swatch. A bit of a darker kind of purple than the last shade, that is shade Knee Highs. Then there is the deepest brown matte shade in this palette, more of like a terracotta, I'd kind of say. That is shade Flannel, and finishing off with a really deep purple matte shade, that is the shade Velvet One. So 12 absolutely stunning shades. Definitely a few in here that have caught my eye already, and I think I'm going to incorporate into the eyeshadow look. So yeah, very excited to actually try out the shades on my eyes, see how I get on with them, and yeah, just give my first impressions and kind of first reviews of the Colourpop Plush Like Me palette. So I'm going to go ahead and start the look, so stick around. So I'm all ready to do an eyeshadow look. Of course, I've already got the rest of my makeup done, just so I can focus on testing out this palette and then obviously finishing off the eye look. I think first of all I'm going to go in with shade Runway, which was this like most lightest neutral shade here, just as a base for the look. I think overall I want to go for something quite deep with a little pop of that first pink shimmer, but I say that I often change my mind halfway through doing a look. But I've gone for this quite big fluffy brush to get like a good base down, and so far it's definitely applying to the brush really nicely. There's a little bit of fallout in the palette, but nothing too drastic. It is quite subtle. In fact, I think I'm going to use this smaller mirror just so I can get right up in there. It's almost got a bit more of a pink tinge on my eye compared to the swatch. Maybe because I've got the eye base on compared to the like paleness of my arm, but it's a nice shade, maybe a little bit too subtle. Definitely think this is like a base shade rather than like a standout shade for the palette or for the look. I don't know if you can necessarily see it on the camera, but it has, yeah, definitely got a bit more of a champagne pink tinge to it, which I do actually really like. Next, I'm gonna go in, I think I'm gonna go in with a dark shade kind of from the get-go, and I'm gonna use shade Girl Band, which was that kind of purpley toned brown. I'm just going to use the same brush because it's only had this like first shade on, and see how this applies. So again, going onto the brush nicely, little bit of fallout, but it's not like chalky, it's just a bit of obviously like loose powder. So let's go for the outer half of my eye. Definitely very pigmented this time. Hopefully gonna get a nice blend. I want to still blend this in over most of my lid. I'm hoping by having that first shade down it's going to soften it up a little bit and not be quite so dark. Maybe not the easiest shade to blend. I would have thought as well this brush would be quite good because it's quite big and quite fluffy, but I do like the tone of it. I do like the little hint of purple. I think it's going to go well with how I'm envisaging the rest of the look going. Okay, now I've got that blended out on both eyes. I'm actually really happy with it. Can't lie, it did take quite a while to blend out just a small amount of that shadow. So if you're thinking of trying out this palette, then just bear that in mind, that you're going to have to be blending for quite a while, and you probably don't want to put too much on your eye first of all, like I did. But I'm now going to go in with the darkest shade in the palette, this real deep purple shade, Velvet One, kind of again on the outer corner and into my crease, just to, yeah, go for a bit more like a vampy, glamorous type look. So I have opted for a smaller brush this time, and there seems to be a bit less actual fallout in the palette from this shade. I don't know if this is because this is like a proper pressed pigment. Do actually really like the purple tone, it's so pretty. Definitely think you could create some really nice kind of sultry vampy looks with this palette, but also some really nice just like neutral looks, or neutral with a little pop of colour. I think it, although from like the first glance maybe the colour story doesn't seem the most versatile or out there, I think it actually is far more versatile than I certainly gave it credit for from my initial first impression. This shade is definitely applying a lot better than that last one. I don't know if it's the brush, I don't know if it's the shade, but really liking that. I think it's added a really nice depth to the eye compared to the other one. So yeah, really liking that, really impressed with that shade. Probably my favourite matte shade out of the ones I've used so far, and I'm gonna get my other eye done. So there's the purple shade Velvet One done on both eyes now, and I'm gonna do, I think, the shimmer last. So next up I'm gonna focus on the under eye. I've got this really small brush to get a bit of precision, maybe a bit of like smudginess as I go as well. But first up I'm going back in with shade Runway just on the inner part of my eye, just to start that off looking a bit lighter first of all. So I'm going to see how this is going to apply with this tiny brush, and I don't have any eye base on my under eye as well, so it's going to be interesting. Definitely much subtler without the eye base. Maybe it's why it looked so pale when I swatched it on my arm. I mean, I did just use a nude eye base, so I wouldn't have thought it'd have that much impact, but apparently it did. To be honest, I don't think it even looks like I've got any eyeshadow on this part. Maybe if I go with a little bit of Girl Band, I may regret this. Okay, yeah, so just a little subtle purple, I think. is nice. And then I'm going to get a very small amount of shade Velvet one, which is what I used for the outer part, and use that for the outer part of my under eye as well. So there's all of the matte eyeshadows done now for this look, and so far I have been really impressed. I'd say my least favourite shade so far has been the second shade that I used, which was shade Girl Band, just because the blend was quite difficult with it, and yeah, it just wasn't my favourite shade that I've used. I am going to now finish off this look by sweeping a load of shade Throwback all over my lid. It's swatched so beautifully, so I'm just going to use my finger for this, and hopefully it's going to look just as good on my eye as it did in the swatch. It is, yeah, very buttery, very shiny. Oh wow, yeah, that is absolutely gorgeous. Just gonna drag it. I don't want to drag it all the way across my eyes. I really don't think the camera is doing that justice, but that is an absolutely stunning shade. That was just one swatch, has done my entire lid, and I've still got loads left over on my finger. Just gonna get my other eye done, and then I'll be back to finish off the look. So that was definitely my favourite shadow that I've used out of the palette. It was my favourite shadow swatched, so I'm really happy that it performed well on my eye as well. I'm just going to get the look finished off. I'm just going to use a black eyeliner pencil. I'm using this one here from Primark. I am using a Colourpop Act Natural defining mascara. This is a black mascara, and then I'm going to finish off the look with this Colourpop Ultra Glossy Lip in the shade Here's to You. So yeah, gonna just tie it all together. I'll be back to give my overall first reviews, first impressions of the Colourpop Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. And there is the entire look now completed. I absolutely love this look. I think the standout shade definitely was that shimmer. I've tried to take like a couple of photo close-ups as well, just so you can probably appreciate the look a bit better, which I will insert hopefully here somewhere. But yeah, I think these shades are really pretty together, and it is definitely that shimmer, I think, that's tied it all up and just made it really pop. I think if you wanted to make this like a real going out look, you could pop on a pair of false eyelashes. Considering I'm just sitting around the house today, I didn't really feel like it was necessary, but yeah, really happy. I think in terms of my first impressions of the palette, obviously, first of all, to look at, it just looks wow, so pretty. Definitely gives me kind of like 1920s feelings with the kind of velvet, the like swirls, the velour, the everything. I think the shade names are really clever, and I actually think the colour story is really pretty, and definitely far more kind of versatile than I initially thought when I saw this palette. I do really like as well that this palette has a mirror in it, which is quite a rarity for a Colourpop 12 pan palette. Even some of their bigger palettes, like I have Fade Into Hue, and that doesn't have a mirror, which I really wish it did. So that is another big positive about it. The shades themselves, the ones I used apart from that second shade, which was okay, were really good, and I did think that they all swatched quite nicely. There was a little bit of fallout from the mattes, but they weren't chalky, they weren't powdery, they were definitely pigmented, and all of the kind of shimmer metallics I think performed excellently in the swatch. And obviously the one shade that I used for this look performed absolutely outstandingly, so I definitely cannot complain. I will definitely say this is another fantastic eyeshadow palette from Colourpop, and definitely different to any of the other Colourpop palettes I own in terms of like how it looks and in terms of the colour story, so I'm very happy about that. But yeah, definitely let me know if you have the Colourpop Plush Like Me palette and what you think of it, or just what your favourite Colourpop eyeshadow palette is. I have a few, but you know, could always do with some recommendations for some more next time I pick up some makeup. But I hope that you enjoyed my kind of quick review of the Plush Like Me eyeshadow palette. Hope that you enjoyed the look. I definitely had a lot of fun trying out this palette for the first time. But Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, please do give the video a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, and if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in my next video.